Yes.
Will you repeat after me? I, Susie Blackhurst, will faithfully support the Constitution. Well, actually, I think you've got it there. Can you just...
You want me just to read it?
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
I, Susie Blackhurst, will faithfully support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Colorado and the laws made pursuant thereto, and will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Director of the Estes Park Local Marketing District upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you, Susie. I think that is all we need to do. I welcome you to the board. I look forward to your counsel. Yes?
Thank you.
Loud.
Thank you. How do I sign this and turn this in?
I will be in contact with you to do that after this meeting. If you don't mind emailing me your cell phone number separately, and then we'll get connected.
Okay. I will do that after the meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And your first duty as a new board member, Susie, is we're going to be interviewing Ms. Kara Franker, who is a finalist for the CEO position. So with that being said, I would like to let Lori, if she is with us, start us off and kind of introduce everyone, all the players, and get us going.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for all making time for a special meeting today. And I want to start off by just thanking the board for giving me and Graves Consulting the opportunity to work with you on this CEO search, because it has been a great experience. Getting to know the organization, getting to know each of you. You know, I've done a lot of work in Estes Park and I love the town, and you have been no exception. So it's been wonderful to work with and I appreciate it. And it's also been interesting getting to meet all of the good candidates that this process brought forward, which was nice to see. And as you're aware, we have with us here today the one that we named as a finalist, Kara Franker, meet the board at Estes Park. And what I think might be helpful before we start, my goal is that I'm going to kind of kick this off. I have a handful of questions that I'm going to present to Kara that have come out of the discussions I've had with each of you about areas that you wanted to be able to learn a little bit more about with her. So the idea is that I will ask a few questions and then we'll get it rolling and turn it over to each of you. But it might be helpful, if you don't mind, if each of you first would just kind of briefly introduce yourself to Kara. I'm sure she probably knows the names, but doing that really quickly. So maybe Deb, we would start with you. And you're muted. We can't hear you.
You're muted, Deb.
Yeah, I'm coming. Kara, I met you at our committee meeting interview originally, and I have since then looked forward to talking with you some more. I'm the current board president, and I look forward to introducing you to the rest of our Visit Estes Park board and our community. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Scott, would you mind going from here?
Not a problem. Scott Webermeyer. I'm currently the treasurer of the local marketing district board. I'm a trustee with the town. I was appointed to that position after coming in fourth the two previous elections, the top three candidates being seated. So some sort of booby prize there, but combination thereof. I was on the initial board for the local marketing district and served on this board for 8 years at that point in time. I've also done 10 years on the school board and a variety of other sentences in the community. Been here for a long, long time, raised 4 children in the community, and they were all smart enough to see how much fun it is up here and have moved on to other venues. But look forward to the opportunity today. Wondering if we might take down Kristen's screen so we have a little bit bigger picture of everybody.
Thank you for that.
Excellent idea.
Good call. Good call. Okay. McShann, do you have a second just to introduce yourself? I know you've met from the first round.
Absolutely. Hey, Kara, McShann Walker. I'm a new member on the board for the local marketing district. also the secretary now, they tell me. So that's a new thing. But we met in the previous round, and we're really looking forward to talking more with you today.
Likewise. Thank you. Trustee Sinak.
Hi, I'm Marie Sinak. I am currently a town trustee. I've been a trustee since 2018. I am on this board. I've been on this board for 2.5 years. And before that, I was on the school board for 8 years, prison school board for 2 years. And then I was on the Parks and Rec board after that. I've been in town for 25 years, and I have 2 kids. One is away in school in Phoenix, and the other is a freshman in high school. So, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Sean.
My name is Sean Juergens. I'm the vice chair. I've been on the VEP board for about 5 years now, and we look forward to getting to know you a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Pat.
Pat Murphy. I own 2 hotels in Estes Park, Murphy's River Lodge, Murphy's Resort, and I've been on the VEP board for about 3 years. So looking forward to getting to know you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking a moment to introduce yourselves. And so really what I'd like to do, Kara, some of these first few questions may sound a little bit duplicative from some of the things that we went through in the first round interview, but I know we have a few new board members here who weren't involved that would love a chance to be able to hear kind of your response to those. So what I'd love to start with is just, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and specifically what you feel like makes you the strongest candidate for this position.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Well, thank you all for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here virtually with you guys today. So I have kind of an odd background. That's kind of what I mentioned when I met you guys before. And that is that I kicked off my career as a practicing attorney. So I grew up in Kansas and went to the University of Kansas for undergrad. A fun fact is that I was an NFL cheerleader for 3 years while I was in school, and then did some sales in between law school and undergrad. Ended up graduating with my degree from the University of Denver's law school. So got to spend a lot of great time in Colorado then. And then I moved to Miami, where I was a domestic violence prosecutor. So in Colorado, you guys call it the DA. In Florida, we call it the state attorney. And while I was doing that, dusted off my undergraduate degree in journalism and started writing to really get to know the city. So there was kind of this society blog at the time, and I wrote hundreds of articles for free for them. It was fun for me because I got to go to the charity galas and the fun events and really kind of get to know the scene and the city. But what that turned into was an entire different career. And that's where my entire focus shifted towards tourism specifically, because Visit Florida was the first one to give me my shot, if you will, to speak. They had a program called Insiders, which were influencers before that was the term. And my topic was entertainment and luxury. So I would travel around the state of Florida, cover, concerts, hotels, fine dining. That was the fun part about the luxury. So you got to stay at the nicest places. And when I say cover, it means that we would do social media posts. We would write about it for magazines. We would do video productions where I would write the content and actually star in the videos as well. And then we pushed it out. So it was a whole content marketing program. Within that, awesome job. It's one of the coolest jobs I've ever had, to be honest with you. I got to meet so many of the different destination marketing organizations throughout the state. And when we all really got to know each other, it ended up that I had a business there. So I worked with everyone from St. Augustine to Bradenton and Anna Maria Island and Miami and, all up and down the coast, and launched my own business, moved away from the law, although I do keep my law license up to date because you never know when you're going to need it, but moved away from the law, focused completely on tourism marketing, and had a very successful business for a very long time. Actually, my company is still open. And ended up, with Visit Florida as one of my biggest clients. And then Miami ended up being one of my biggest clients too, ran their entire content program. We ended up just maxing out their website. So I would hire writers, I would write myself, we would do SEO research, we would figure out, whatever was going to hit the best. And we would get 1 million hits a month on that website. Now it is Miami, so that's possible to do. And so it turns out a few years ago that the CEO of Visit Lauderdale, who's also a lawyer and comes from a different background, kind of saw what I was doing. And I ended up applying to be her senior vice president of marketing communications. Was absolutely thrilled when I got that job. I've been in that role now for nearly 2 years. And it was kind of the icing on the cake because although I was working with so many different places and loved running my own business, the ability to promote one destination and just to max it out to do it the best I could was a fun challenge for me. And we've been through a rebranding effort. We're actually launching our new brand now, which has been extensive. Obviously, just like you guys have been through the pandemic, working through those challenges. We created a brand new database to really check our marketing dollars because now more than ever, our tourist development tax is under the microscope. So protecting how we spend our money, being accountable for how we spend our money. And every aspect of the job, from public relations, social media, content marketing, the research side of it, community relations is all rolled up into what I do now. So that's kind of the journey, if you don't mind me taking you down that road for a minute of how I got to where I am. And to go to Lori's second part of her question, what I think I have that's a little bit unique is the fact that I'm a lawyer. Because as we all know, in this type of work, we are constantly looking at relationships with different entities, whether that's with the town, whether that's with the county. How do you apply for certain grants? How do you, when you're doing contracts with certain organizations and what you're looking at, there's so many legal issues that come up. So even though I don't pretend that I am an expert in every part of the law, because I did come from criminal law and nobody wants to deal with that and what we're doing with now, I do think that kind of gives me an interesting outlook on dealing with, from a leadership perspective and a CEO perspective.
Awesome. Thank you. Any follow up on that before we move on to the next question? I want to make sure I don't cut off any of the board member questions. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears for a second and say, okay, let's assume that you are awarded this position. And as you think about integrating into the organization, what would your, say, 90 to 180 day integration plan look like? And what would be kind of the primary areas you would focus on? And maybe talk a little bit about internally and externally.
That's excellent. It would be so simple. It would be a sponge. Because my first goal would be to come in, and that's the part that I would have to spend so much time. Being an outsider coming in, I need to get to know the staff. What I know from what they're doing is that they're doing an excellent job. So I wouldn't want to come in and ruin or mess up anything that they're already working on. They're killing it. It would just be getting to know, all of the different strategies, the things that they're executing, really become an expert on what they're doing. They are the experts. So I would hope that they would teach me everything that they know about Visit Estes Park and all the programs that are being worked on and the strategies and the goals going forward so that I could kind of assimilate into that and really work and collaborate. So that would be like my first focus is the staff, really getting to know them and spending some time just learning about what they've been doing on a deeper scale. And then also, of course, the board. I mean, we've got a great set of business owners on this team right here. Yes, I've Googled all of you and learned a little bit about your backgrounds and your businesses that you do, because I feel like that research is so important. I want to sit down with you guys and I would want to find out what has not worked in the past. What's working? What do you hope to see differently? Or what do you say, don't touch this, Kara, this is working so well, we want it to keep going. I would really it's almost like a listening tour. So starting with the staff and the board, and then figuring out from there, who do I need to talk to first in the town? Who are some of your biggest stakeholders that I need to make sure that I get some quality time with? I hope soon that's face-to-face. If not, then virtually, however we got to get it done, so that I can really learn the players in the town and to make sure that we're starting to figure out how to balance all of those different interests. Because as we all know, that's really the trick of the trade here. with so many different audiences is to figure out what is everybody else hoping that we're going to do so that we can craft a message that encourages that, but then also gets across what we need to do, knowing what we need to do for the visitors. So I would say the first 90 days is getting to know as many people as I possibly can and figuring out what's worked, what hasn't worked, so that I can figure out how to best move forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Any follow-up questions on that before we move on? Okay, well said. So as one of the things that we talked about, I know we talked about a little bit in our discussion and came up in the first round interview, is that one of the most critical elements of this role, and you've alluded to it in your last answer, is staff leadership, right? Having a very strong staff and knowing the leadership, the oversight, the guidance, the support. And so I'd like to hear you just talk a little bit about your approach to that piece of it.
That's excellent. So I have been in situations personally where a new leader has come in and just kind of steamrolled through everybody. And it's kind of like you're so excited for somebody new to come in, and then you're just kind of like, oh, like how, like what just happened to us? That is the complete opposite of how I want to be, because there's a Rockstars team that's already in place who've been operating without a leader for how many months now. So my position on that is to be able to learn what they're already doing and then to offer my assistance however I can to help them reach the goals that they've already set. And then as we analyze everything and look towards like next fiscal in the future, you know, if there's some creative ideas that I can bring to the table, I would love to be able to do that. But I think from a leadership perspective, I am definitely somebody that believes in collaboration, not steamrolling, somebody who believes that, you know, you should be able to come to work and love your job. And if there's any industry that you can come to work and love, it's the tourism industry. You get to promote an absolutely gorgeous place. So everybody should go to work each day feeling like, wow, I actually really love what I do. But the second component of that is that what we do is so important because of all the people that depend on those jobs and all of the residents who work for a living in the tourism industry and feed their family because of what we do. So that I think is, you know, I think developing an impact statement, if you maybe you already have one, and that's great, but figuring out, you know, how many people in Estes Park are we really promoting their lifestyle and helping them feed their families is something that it's like when everything's so stressful, that's what I bring my team back to in Greater Fort Lauderdale is, don't forget guys, 180,000 people work in the tourism industry in Broward County, and we are directly responsible for making sure that they can feed their families. So that's kind of my motivational speech that I like to give, and collaboration, of course.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so you on this next one, you've already touched on this a little bit, but I think there's probably more to it just based on some of the discussions we've had. And that would be, can you talk about some of the research that you've done about Estes Park and about specifically this organization since you applied for the job and what you've learned from that? Any of that was unexpected or things that you've learned through your research?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I went through the operating plan that was put together. I also took a look at the visitor survey that was done a few years ago. And I brought this up in my interview previous. One of the things that I thought was so fascinating, I mean, I knew from being in Colorado so much. I mean, and some of you know that I have family that actually they live in Larimer County, and then they have vacation rentals over in Grand Lake. So we go through Estes Park, stop through Estes Park all the time. I was in Colorado. Don't tell anybody it was during a pandemic, so I know we weren't supposed to travel, but I was in Colorado for like a month in September, one, to escape the Florida heat, because you got to do that, but two, just because I've got family there and I needed to see them, even though you're not supposed to, but I had to. So one of the things that I knew already coming in was that your high season was the summer. And that's what the town is really bustling, and it's a big deal. What I didn't realize when I was looking at the visitor survey is that yes, your drive market for your feeder markets are really strong. It's mostly drive market. And then there's one fly market in that list, and that's Florida. And what I loved about learning that is the fact that as we talk about sustainability with visitors and making that very, you know, it's a tight balance. you don't want to just do a come one, come all approach, which is what was happening back in the day. There's this entire focus, and this is across the country, of how do you promote sustainable tourism? You balance resident interest and complaints, if we can be honest, with bringing in high value visitors. So it doesn't mean we just say, oh, we don't care about the day trippers anymore. We still need them to come through the coffee shops and the stores and all the rest of it. But if you already have a feeder market like Florida, they become a very high value target market. Because why? You got to get on a plane for 4 hours. Then you got to get in the car and drive there. So they're going to spend more time. Instead of just coming in for a day or a weekend and going out, they're probably going to stay a week or longer. They're going to spend more money in the town, and they're going to spend more money on activities and more money on lodging. And as we all know, that helps with the tourist development taxes. So that little nugget, when I discovered that, I was so excited about, one, because I know the Florida market so well. So I feel like I know how to speak to that market. And two, the fact that that's such a huge opportunity for Estes Park, because yes, you probably don't need any help with your summertime, right? But what about the shoulder seasons, fall and spring? And I need to do a deeper dive to figure out how your numbers are there. And then in the winter too, in Florida, people just want to go and dip their toe in the snow for sometime during the holidays. There could be an entire campaign to get people to come over and hang out in a hot tub with the snow in the background so they can snap a selfie. These are not the people that are going to be on the slopes or pushing you guys out to go on snowshoes. They're the ones that want to go to the snow and tell all their friends, look, it's snow. My kid's seeing snow for the first time. So as you can see, when I read that visitor survey, the wheels just kind of started turning for ideas for future campaigns, because I'm like, if you guys haven't capitalized on that yet, there could be a real opportunity. And you already do a really good job of marketing already. So it's not a complaint at all about what you're currently doing. It's just maybe an opportunity for a high target visitor moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. I have one more question on my list, but I thought I'll check and see if there's any follow-up questions from the board on what you've shared so far. Nope. Okay. I think you must be answering all the questions exactly right. So I want to switch away from the role a little bit and think about the change in the lifestyle, right, of coming from where you are right now and moving into this mountain community. So can you talk a little bit about specifically what appeals to you about being in a mountain community, and specifically Estes, this mountain community, which is unique even among the resort mountain communities in Colorado?
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned it earlier, and that is family. So the fact that, not just my parents that are there, but my brother and his family and extended family. I have no family in Florida, none at all, except for me, my husband and my daughter and my dog, Kokomo. So the idea that we could move close to family is huge. I'm just going to tell you that and be completely honest. Now, Estes Park just happens to be a really awesome place. I know that because of all the times that we've been there, and because it's so close to kind of the activities that we do, moving back and forth in between basically Windsor and Grand Lake. So I just think that Estes Park has this, I've mentioned this before, this kind of utopia for me. I imagine it, and I asked this question the last time because I'm like, am I totally off? But I imagine it as it being this just tight-knit community where people see this lifestyle that they want to live, and they come together. And I'll even say, I've been reading the newspapers recently, and I saw that awful fire at McShan's place. And I'm so sorry that his staff had to go through that. But one of the things that I thought was so amazing, which would never happen here in South Florida, is that the town kind of banded together to help those employees. And to me, call me sentimental, that completely melted my heart. It was like, yes, this is why I want that. I'm in a big metropolis. I spent many years, 14 years in Miami, and then 12 years in Miami, the last 2 years in Fort Lauderdale. It's a big city. Yes, it's a beach town, but it's a big city. I love the idea of going to the mountains, not being able to see nearly as many people, hopefully seeing a lot of elk, and just that lifestyle to me is perfection. I've done the beach. I love it. I'm going to keep going. But to have that mountain town vibe in that community, remember I come from Kansas. So I come from that Midwest mentality where you really grow up in a community with values and people that care about you. And I miss it tremendously, especially because my daughter's 4 years old and I want that for her.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. I'm sure there are other things that the board members are interested in hearing about. I'm going to give them a few minutes to formulate any questions or follow-ups that they may have.
All right, Kara, in our previous conversation, you suggested also an interest in getting away from the 85-degree temperatures and 85 humidity. We've got our own 85 here, which generally equates to about 25 degrees and 60-mile-an-hour winds. I've seen that circumstance chase off any number of folks or turn them into summer residents only. So just to add to the time frames that you've been through here, there are times when it's not nearly as much fun. Not really a question, just making sure that you're aware of how big a pile you're stepping into, or how big a drift, if you will. I would ask, what challenges do you relish the most that come with this opportunity?
Winning people over. Because I have my entire life had a lot to prove. You know, imagine being right out of law school with long blonde hair, walking into a Miami courtroom and having to do voir dire, which is when you pick a jury. And you've got a defense attorney, 30 years on the other side, who just thinks, I'm going to eat this girl for lunch. So I relish that challenge because I over prepare and I'm so into research because I have a lot to prove. And so to me, this is a lot more fun, by the way, than going into criminal court. To me, the challenge that I love is showing up someplace and really winning people over, because I want to come at it with a collaborative attitude. And I really want to make sure that we're working together. So that's a challenge, but it's actually something I love to do too.
So Kara, you've kind of gone right down the middle of where I wanted to go next. If you became the new CEO of Visit Estes Park, it would mean taking on a successful team with already defined roles and expectations. And leading an existing team can present an exciting opportunity or an extremely challenging situation. So what I wanted to ask is, if you've ever experienced that type of a situation, and could you share with us an example of the best team leader you ever reported to and what made them exceptional?
Absolutely. Those are two great questions. So, and I know we're in a public forum, so I want to be careful about but I did come in to a bit of a broken team when I came into Visit Lauderdale. And that was so hard. And I will tell you that we even had a culture survey that was done, and I can't get into all the details of that, but it just kind of, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And as somebody that was an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver and I'm a doer, and I just like to get it done. And even though I've led lots of teams, especially, and I didn't even mention this, but I'm the editor-in-chief of 2 magazines. And so the teams that I leave through those magazines are in different cities. And then, running your own business, it's a lot different than coming into an office and having 8 direct reports, and everybody's kind of like broken when you come in. So that was a huge challenge. And we have come so far. I mean, my team now they are just rock stars. But what I love about this is that this team isn't broken. This team, they're already rock stars. So to me, that's a huge plus, because instead of coming in and trying to figure out, how do I mesh these personalities together? How do I get everybody excited about being on the same team and going the same direction? It's almost like I just need them to take me in instead of, here, let me put everybody together. So that is huge. I love that. And then I would say the person that has made the biggest impact on my leadership development is actually a former CEO himself. I'm sure Lori will share with you, I I put him down as one of my references, and then I paid him to say really good things about me. So I hope it worked. But he was the former CEO of Destination DC and also Bermuda, the country, and then some other places. So he's been a CEO for 35 years. And I just happened to meet him through a consulting program that he's doing, Visit Lauderdale. So he's been with us for 18 months. He and I work more closely than my CEO. And so even though technically he's not my boss, he's my mentor. And everything that I've learned from him, it's like he can walk into any situation and then immediately assess like, okay, here are the problems, but how do I get everybody excited about working together? I mean, the opportunity to work, I would say under, but with somebody like him has completely changed how it made me go from like a baby leader to an actually like grown up, like I know what I'm doing kind of a leader, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Kara, I have some more very management level variety questions. I don't want to take over the floor. So I'll see if I can't get them out quickly and other people can move on to some of the more fun questions that I think you have been able to answer during this time. I also did some research about you and the organization that you joined. It seemed to me that in 2018, there were some financial issues that an audit showed up about Visit Lauderdale. And what I'm wondering, you weren't there in 2018, but you have to have lived through some of the ramifications. And I wanted to know what those ramifications are and what you have learned from that experience.
So that's an excellent question. And that audit is probably one of the best crash courses I've had in budgeting and in transparency. And it actually, there's so much that I learned from it. But I would say the biggest thing is, if of course, and I don't, again, we're in a public setting, so I don't want to call anybody out or, dig up old graves or anything like that. But to concentrate on the part of it that is what I learned from it, it is the fact that the people that own businesses that are paying into the tourist development taxes are stakeholders. And we, as tourism marketing organizations, have a fiscal responsibility. We have a duty to be responsible for every single penny that passes through the organization. And so, one bad apple who is, paying their own company and making money on the side can take down not only an entire organization, but an entire industry. Because what that does is it gives fuel to the fire when, the legislature or whoever starts to take, well, maybe we could take tourist development taxes and put it towards this or put it towards that. Not understanding the fact that, and I mentioned this before, poor Colorado in the 90s, when that huge fight happened over whether or not to pay into a tourist development tax bucket, and that money was ripped away, that standing that Colorado had dropped significantly. People still study that today. So it's the reason why I say that. And I'm sorry that it happens to be Colorado, because I wish it was a different example. We could throw a different state under the bus. But what it does is it's the fact that, if you can't learn from that, any kind of mishandling of funds will blow up an organization. And it's just not something you can do. And that's why transparency is key. That's why the sunshine laws are absolutely 100% important. That's why the budgeting aspects, I manage a $10 million budget right now. And one of the way, and that's, you guys, that's a lot of money. It's almost scary to say it. But the thing about it is we track where every single dollar goes, and every single campaign gets put into this dashboard. And the dashboard didn't exist before I came, but the audit was one of the reasons why I said we need to create this. So at any time, let's say, for this summer, we promote something called Lauder Deals. I can pull up Lauder Deals from last year, and I can look at all of the different campaigns we did and the different ads we placed, and I can say how that money was spent and where it went and how it performed. And then the other thing that's constantly in the back of my mind, which was in my marketing plan too, was to make sure that we were spending the majority of our money on digital advertising and not just out of home or, the fun stuff that people used to do all the time. But the fact is that you can't prove, really well. You can make an argument, but you can't prove that whether or not that actually did what it was supposed to. So I'm just like a long-winded answer telling you, like, the fact that we put a dashboard in to try to figure out at any moment we could be accountable for how we were spending that money because of how important it is. So, I hope that answered your question, Susie. And I wanted to say congratulations for your new spot. And I'm sorry because I saw that you went to Kansas State and I went to KU.
That's okay. I won't do any of those things. I'm older now. Maybe over a beer somewhere. Yeah. But on those same lines, you don't want to throw anybody specifically under a bus. But when you are managing and going in and understanding where things are, sometimes you have to have a tricky conversation with an existing employee and a direct report who rarely, if ever, is in a position that they are questioned about how they are operating. Tell us about an experience when you might have had that happen and how you handled it.
Let's see. So how do I not hurt anybody's reputation and answer your question in a respectful way is what I'm trying to figure out here. Just, I guess, in general terms, if you don't mind if I can speak to you in general terms, I have had to have some very difficult conversations with direct reports. And the one thing that works really well is to say, look, we just went through an audit. If we don't make some serious changes about how we're tracking these gift certificates that partners are giving us to go out to the media and to go out to the travel trade and to go out to event planners, these gift certificates right now, we're missing some of these. And that's a really big problem. So if we can't figure out a tracking system, then we have to either get rid of this entire program or I'm going to have to give this job to somebody else. So if that kind of gives you a kind of how I approach, I mean, honestly, you blame it on the audit because there is really no other excuse. You want people to do the right thing. And I always expect that people will do the best and they will put their best foot forward. Sometimes people don't. And when that happens, unfortunately, you have to call them into account. It's accountability. We're talking about taxpayer money. There's no other option but accountability and transparency.
I have a couple more. I believe that I read that you have been involved recently in creating standards and written agreements for sponsorships and incentives, and entertainment expenses might come under that umbrella. What advice can you provide us about those experiences?
Oh, that's great. So, I think one of the biggest things when you're coming up with some of these, especially sponsorship agreements, is you have to first make sure that it fits within the bylaws that already exist. So as you guys, I'm sure, already do, you look at your bylaws and you say, first, does this even fit within this list of things that we actually can do? And if it does, then how do we negotiate the terms out front in a way where both parties are absolutely crystal clear about what has to be done on either side? And so the key for me, I always try to put as many details as I can up front and have the parties sign off so that there's just really no question about what needs to happen. Because again, whether it's an event sponsorship, or a media buy, because I will sometimes do media buys that are tied into an event, because I actually think that's it depends on the instance, but it can be a lot better use of funds. I'll give you an example. We host every year this huge concert. It's not we, but it's Riptide is the concert. And we are usually event sponsors of this concert on the beach. Kenny Chesney is headlined. It's a great, toes in the sand, ocean outside. I mean, it's a great concert. But how the contract was written previously was just here, let's hand over $100,000. Room nights are going to go off the charts. We know all the hotels are going to be full because we have all these big names. Well, the problem with that is, and yes, you can count the hotel room nights, but you're not really getting as much bang for your buck. So then what I would do is I took that contract and I say, okay, Intercom is the media company that's hosting Riptide. So instead of just handing them the money to come to the event and helping with production costs, instead, I want to do a flyaway giveaway in our top markets, New York, DC, Chicago, Boston, Dallas. Let's do a giveaway. Then, so we are getting out on their radio waves. I want banners on A, B, and C, so I will list out all of those different elements that go more to a media buy rather than just event sponsorship. And I don't know if that's going way into the weeds for you guys, but it's just an example of how I'll kind of parse that out.
I have one more question that I would like to ask before I go away for a while and get silent. I would love to hear your description of what is transparency and how do you display that to governmental officials as well as community residents?
That's a great question. And it hits it out of the park for exactly the direction that not just Estes Park is, I think, moving towards, but the entire country. And so Destinations International, who you guys probably already know, is the association for DMOs across the country. So a few years ago, they switched their lexicon from a come one, come all mentality, just let's make as much money as possible off of people, to how do you create this sustainable community versus visitor aspect. They did a recent study, if I remember right, it was like 41% of residents don't want to welcome visitors back. And so to me, that is an opportunity. It's a problem, but it's an opportunity, because what it means is for the residents, it's on us to communicate how they benefit from the visitors being in town. But then it's also on us to go after the high value targets, but to also tell them how we're doing that. Because if all they see is just back to back up cars, coming through Estes Park and the 4th of July or during the summer and trash on the side of the roads and whatever, that's all they see. So it's almost like we have to have a campaign just for the residents to be able to communicate with them why what we're doing is important. And then also to prove to them that we're going after the high value targets and not just the day trippers that are going around and making the traffic terrible and whatever else. So, and then to go back to your question about what is transparency and when you're working with different government agencies, let me tell you, in Broward County, we are responsible for promoting 31 municipalities, 31 mayors, 31 commissions, all those different chambers of commerce. I don't even know how many chambers of commerce there are. I had this morning, actually, I went in person to present to our tourist development council. And you have different mayors that sit on it, and then different hoteliers and different people from the community. It's kind of our main advisory board. And so one of the things that has worked so well in my tenure is I like to come with pretty slides. I do, because I think that people like to look at pretty things on the screen. But I come with so many facts and information to back it up then they love that because then they can take that back to their constituents and take credit for it. Because elected officials want to be able to show that they're doing valuable things. And guess what? Tourism and boosting tourism taxes is a very valuable thing for their constituents. So for me, that's how I like to work with elected officials and different governing boards, is to arm them with as many facts as possible. Well, I should say not as many facts as possible because you don't want to overwhelm everybody, but with at least a little snackable tidbit that they can just take and use for themselves. And no pride of ownership here. Take it, use it. And then as far as transparency, it's the ability to say, look, this campaign didn't perform as well as we wanted it to. But instead of just, watching it burn money for the next month, we took the rest of that and moved it towards this effort. I think it's being able to admit it when maybe you're trying something that didn't work and then going back and fixing it. I mean, really, what burns everybody down is the cover up. That is the opposite of transparency. So I think if there is a level of communication where, I'm going to have to come in if I get this job and establish trust. If I go in front of boards, I go in front of community members, they're going to want to know that they can trust me to give them the facts. And then I want to be able to go to them and say, look, we tried this really creative idea. The staff was really excited about this. I was really excited about it. We vetted it. We talked to the county attorney or your town attorney or whoever. We thought it was going to work. It's not performing, but I want to be honest with you about that so that we can figure out, and here's the next plan that we want to try instead. So I think that's how I approach transparency and how I think that communication is the 100% ticket, whether you're dealing with elected officials, town members, residents, the whole gamut.
Thank you, Kara. Go ahead.
So Kara, I keep switching, I keep changing my question because every time I have my question written down, you answer part of it. So, and that's great. I think you have a great bubbly personality, and it comes across very intelligent. I don't want to insult by saying bubbly. I am using that as a total compliment. But I do have a question for you, and you've answered part of it, so you just probably need to expand upon it. And you first of all, you talked about a rock star staff, which I completely agree with. They also have a lot of very strong personalities in that staff, as does the board. So it doesn't stop there. The board also has strong personalities, let alone the two boards that this park has to answer to, the town board and the county commissioners. So we have a whole bunch of kind of A personalities, kind of sometimes going in all different directions. And so I just wanted you to expand just a little bit more on your work under boards, your strategic planning, and how that relates to budgeting and all that.
Okay. Well,
that question makes sense.
Yeah, so you want me to touch on how to deal with strong personalities? Well, I can tell you that I answered to the person with the strongest personality I've ever had to deal with in my life. She's 4 years old, and that girl rules the roost. So, but I get you. And I have a strong personality too, and I think that the big thing for that is to let people have the time to state their piece and be respectful. Give them the ability to have opinions. Here's the thing is that I can present a campaign or a budget or a marketing plan or an operational plan or a growth plan. And there are things that I didn't think of that if somebody can come up with that and say, oh, well, Kara, did you think about this or that? Instead of me taking offense, I'll be like, absolutely, that's a great idea. Let's figure out how to work that in. So I love it when people speak up. I love it when people contribute their ideas. I never want to think that my work is so good that there's nothing to fix about it, because we all know that that's not true. So I'm very much like, what can I do better? And if people have different ideas to help, figure that out, I'm all for that. And I think it's just a level of respect and letting people have the platform to say their opinions and not to take it personally, but instead take it like business. How do we all work together to make this better? And then as far as the second part of your question was about budgeting. And so help me with that.
So, the way I look at things is that the budget should always follow the strategic plan. So that does not always happen. And so I was just kind of seeing if you had what kind of experience. I'm sure with your own business you had some, but it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell sometimes your own business because you're obviously great at marketing. And so you could have a business that had, two things in it and it looks great because you're so good at marketing. So it's difficult for me. So I'm trying to get beyond that. And I guess I'd like to know if you, with your own business or was it with your other job, you work with strategic planning and how that went down to the budget. But I guess more of the experience of the strategic planning is I just want to expand upon what you've done with that. If it was nothing, that's fine too. But I just want to see what your thoughts are, what your experiences and strategic plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, strategic planning it's embedded inside of marketing. So every time, especially as an entrepreneur, when I was working with different clients, I had to come up with a plan for each one, and I had to work in with whatever budget that they were giving me. And so it may be that a bigger destination, like Miami, and we had this entire content marketing program, and I was responsible for hiring the writers, even as a consultant, hiring the writers, getting them paid, making sure when we were working with the agency hours, and I had to work within the time and budget constraints that they gave me. And so I had to strategically plan for that. So as a, if I can say that about myself, like kind of a OCD perfectionist, if you can, every project that I do involves like a plan, whether that is an Excel spreadsheet with a timeline, where everything is planned out as far as deadlines. I live and breathe deadlines, especially. And so that from an entrepreneur standpoint was working with what other people's budgets were and having to deliver within that budget because I want the business. If I don't do that, I risk them not hiring me back. And one of the reasons why my business was so successful is because I would get repeat clients, but they only do that if you deliver. So I would say that from an entrepreneur perspective. From a DMO perspective, the budget, our entire DMO budget is, we've been slashed a few times because of the pandemic. I think we're at like 35 million or so. I'm responsible for 10 million of that. My budget is insane. My media timeline, my media flow chart, I have like different tabs for different groups. So I have the meetings tab, I have the leisure tab, and then we have different groups that we specifically work on. So LGBT plus, and we have multicultural and different groups, luxury that we're going after. So each one of those has a tab. And then the chart is like this like scary looking thing that goes like, you have to keep scrolling over because each column is planned out for the year. And then at the end of it is the cost and it goes down to the bottom. Well, and here's the other thing is we can't just mess with that budget. The county tells us how much money we get. I can't go over. There's no option to go over. So there's constantly thinking strategically and multiple times throughout the year. So even though I'll do a marketing plan to kick off for the beginning of the fiscal, especially this last year when we didn't know what our TDT was going to be like, from March versus July versus now. So we have done several different versions of the marketing plan to have to keep ticking that money down. And then we did get to tick it back up once we got some extra funds from the county, but it's just a constant analysis. It can't, so I hope that's answering your question. I definitely do a lot of strategic planning when it comes to the budget. You have to, because you got to be responsible for it.
Yeah, I may have put my question incorrectly. What I'm really talking about is the overall strategic plan of the organization.
Oh, good.
And I say that because it's, and having the budget follow that. Not necessarily have the strategic plan trying to follow the budget, but create the budget to follow the strategic plan. And I'm not talking about the total amount. I'm talking about, percentage here, percentage there. And I just found out that my internet connection is unstable. So if you can't hear me, let me know. But to create the budget, to help create the budget, to follow the strategic plan of the board. So more of that. I'm talking about more than the other way around, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sorry about your internet.
I'm not sure if
I think I'm getting.
Not hearing me. It's my internet, so don't.
So one of the things that has been really successful, and this actually came from the mentor that I mentioned to you guys. What he was originally hired to do was create a strategic organizational plan for us to teach us how to do it. We call it a growth plan. And it's different than the marketing plan, and it's different than the budget, because the growth plan is where do you see the organization in 5 years, not just where do you see the organization over the next fiscal. So the reason why the growth plan, I think, really changed our organization is because we didn't do this as much with our board, but for this organization, I would suggest the board be a huge player in this discussion. But it was more the leadership team on the staff getting together and, not just going through your values and your value statements and impact statements and all that. That's really important. But where do you actually see going forward the trajectory? And thinking of things like, for us, hurricanes coming through, pandemics, wildfires, whatever it is. And then also, so anticipating the things that are going to be tough that you have to deal with, but also where you see the destination. And some of that is looking at like, how many room nights do you want to generate for leisure versus how many do you want to generate for meetings? And then, so it's less about what the number of the budget is at that point, and really it's a planning exercise. It's getting everybody on the same page. And then what happens is that growth plan will help guide the marketing plans for each of the fiscal. And then obviously the budget is the money that you get in, but then that will help you decide how to spend that money within the growth plan and the marketing plan itself. So that has been, and that's something I can't take credit for any of that. That is something I learned from Bill Hanbury directly. He taught our organization how to do it, and it changed the way we planned, honestly.
Great. Thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Nope. Susie? You're muted. Nope.
There, I got it. Just a couple of little things. You mentioned that you have a very successful consulting company and that it is still going and blowing and working really well. You mentioned that you are continuing to be editor of two, and from what I read, luxury travel publications. Should you get this job, what are you going to do with those?
That's a great question. So the company that has been my tourism marketing company, under that, it's like I had two different kind of fields under that company. One of them was the writing side. I'm not going to even pretend to call it journalism. It's marketing because it's promoting travel to different places. So I will not call myself a journalist at all, but it fits under the writing aspect. So that's why my company is still going. I do not promote any other destinations right now because that would be a huge conflict of interest. But when I first started this job, the CEO and I had a discussion, and she actually said to me, well, would you keep your magazines? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, is that a possibility? And she was like, well, are you going to write about us? And I was like, absolutely. So it's been a great opportunity. I don't only, this is why I don't call myself a journalist. I'm a marketer, but I don't only write about Fort Lauderdale in those magazines, but when I can put them in, I do. So both sides are happy. And then on the modern luxury side, they are not, it's like a typical magazine is 10 issues a year. The interior design magazine I do is 4 issues a year, and the weddings magazine is 2. And I have it kind of down to a science. So it doesn't take up my time away from the job that I do now. Now with you guys, that's a complete different story. You may say to me, would you be willing to keep your magazine if you put Estes Park in it? And we could have that discussion. Or you may say, Kara, we really want you to completely focus on us and what we're doing. So you got to get rid of it. And so I'm 100% open to having a conversation and figuring out how both sides would want to proceed.
We have just a few more tiny minutes, I believe, and I think it would be interesting to know how the transition from being an entrepreneur, making all your own decisions, and leading all those people down that path. How has that transition to being an employee been for you?
I'll tell you what, it makes my husband so happy because of him waiting. Instead of him waiting for the checks to come in, he knows that we're going to get paid every 2 weeks. So, I think all of you are entrepreneurs if I know your backgrounds, and it's a hustle. And so part of it was to, have that consistency. And even though my business was doing so well, to be able to have that consistency was great for my marriage, if I can be honest. But also, to me, my CEO has given me a lot of freedom and a lot of creative ability to be able to do things. So to me, it wasn't really a hard transition. I loved being able to have a team that was bigger than what I've worked with before, and not just being like in New York or Chicago or whatever, putting out a layout for a magazine, or, just working with the St. Augustine team for, satellite media tour, whatever it was. I love this day in and day out interaction with the team. And so it wasn't hard at all to go from being entrepreneur to leader of the marketing team, because I still feel kind of like an entrepreneur. I didn't feel like I had to lose that part of me. And that is thanks to a CEO who gives me a lot of freedom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Kara, you have single-handedly answered all my 8 questions without me asking them.
Wow.
So I'd like to know also if we've gotten a couple of questions from Scott, and I'm sure he has others. I think Marie has hit on a number of areas of her concern, but I haven't heard from Sean, Pat, or McShann at all. And maybe Scott has some additional questions.
Susie stole my thunder. Sorry, Susie.
You have nothing, Sean?
She asked the question I had.
Okay. All righty. Looks like
I'm real good.
Go ahead. Sorry, Sean.
I'm kind of in the same boat where the questions I had written down, we've kind of danced through most of them. But Kara, you hit on at one point when you were talking about the concert promotion, where it was the difference between an event sponsorship and a media buy, and how are you able to kind of massage the definition of marketing and kind of what you do. And that's something that we've been looking at lately because of the legal responsibility of the funds that we use and what they are allocated for, and then also the responsibility of using them effectively, creatively. And that's a thing that I'm very passionate about, is how we go about doing, more creative things in the future and getting out of a bucket of a very fine definition of marketing. And I was curious, this is a great example in the media buy versus event sponsorship definition. If you had any other examples of times when something that wouldn't necessarily fall directly into the definition of marketing was a very effective promotion that you guys have used in any of the things that you have done.
Yeah, I'll give you this example that has been really a challenge for us. So Broward County, so Visit Lauderdale is a government organization under Broward County. And so I'm not sure if you guys are set up as a 501c6 or it's technically government or how it is, or if it's private. But so that means that everything we do, there's a set of county rules that go, I mean, way into the woods. And so one of the things that's a real big challenge is working with our agency. And that is because of the contract that the county attorney put into place. It's like what they would put into place for like contracting with bus drivers, you know, and different aspects of county service. So like, for example, I can't just like hire a production company to shoot my next campaign. Like I'm doing a brand reveal right now. I can't just hire somebody to shoot it. It has to go through my agency, and the contract says that it actually has to come out of their flat fee. What? They don't want that to come out of their flat fee. That takes away from their hours. They had to then shell that out to somebody else to produce it. So I thought, okay, who do I know in South Florida that has quite an audience, that it's a legitimate media buy because I have so much more freedom with my media buys? Well, it just so happens that I've worked a lot with a company that's in Miami where they have like the equivalent of like TMZ for South Florida. It's like the socialite pages. So on their website, and then also they have a huge social media following. I mean, every time a celebrity comes in town, they're the ones that are sending it out. They also happen to have an incredible production team. So to save my agency from having to go out of their flat fee and also to meet the rules, what I said, and this is what we keep doing, I actually shot, I put my dog in a dog-friendly video we did on Monday through World Red Eye under this same kind of concept. So, and it saves me a ton of money too. I mean, it's like I don't want to say all the numbers, but trust me when I tell you that it saves a lot of money to go through and do a media buy rather than just paying for production. So I pay World Red Eye as a media buy. They go and shoot my video. My agency doesn't have to take it out of their flat fee. I get the added benefit of it going out through all of their channels, which makes us look flashy and cool because, you know, there's always that Fort Lauderdale versus Miami. Miami's cooler. We want to be as cool as they are. And it goes out to that audience. And then also I get the end product. What I want is a video production around a topic that I know is important to us. So that is just like kind of the crazy way our wheels turn to work within the rules, but also get the product at the end that really makes sense. And then the other way we're doing it too, if you'll indulge me for one more example. So I created, along with the help of Bill Hanbury, my mentor, this huge project to promote, and I think I told you guys about this in the last interview, to promote the yachting industry, because Fort Lauderdale is the yachting capital of the world. Well, turns out Bermuda, where Bill used to be the CEO, they want to be the stopover for yachts, leaving South Florida, going back to the Mediterranean. So we actually set up a program where Bermuda is paying us a chunk of change for us to introduce them to the yachting crowd, like the Palm Beach International Boat Show coming up next week. And then, you know, the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show. And so then what happens is that I can take that chunk of money and it doesn't have the same strings attached that the TDT funds do. So then there's all these crazy rules in Florida. I don't know if you guys have them too, but I can't buy media plane tickets with TDT funds. But now I can use the Bermuda money and legally buy a media plane ticket, or a meetings planner who wants to come plan an event at the Diplomat or whatever. So if that kind of gives you an example of the crazy creative ways we follow the rules, we're fully transparent. We told the TDC today, our Tourist Development Council, exactly what we were doing with Bermuda. So everybody knows we're not hiding anything, but we're looking for creative ways to do awesome programs within the rules. Until one day somebody changes the rules and lets me buy a media ticket for somebody to get on an airplane.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I have hold on a second. Let me see if am I muted? No. I had one question that came up that you haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
I assume that Fort Lauderdale has a shoulder and off season. What creative ways have you promoted those seasons where you are?
Yes, our season is opposite of yours. So our high season is the winter, of course, and then into spring break. And then it drops significantly, usually around May, definitely into the summer, but we get some, the crowd that goes to the beaches in the summer, they're usually kind of going more to the Panhandle in northern Florida and like the Drive Market. They're not as much coming to South Florida because our feeder markets are the bigger cities and up and down the eastern seaboard. So just to kind of give you a lay of the land. So then what happens is business drops off pretty significantly when it's the hottest of hot. You guys are so excited in September. You're looking forward to the aspens change colors and the weather feels great. For us, it's still 89 degrees. And that doesn't change until after Thanksgiving. Then it's like 81 degrees. It starts to get a little bit better. So that time period especially is difficult. So what we've done, and other destinations do this as well, we have created a really robust deals program. This is not when the New Yorkers are coming. They're in the Hamptons or they're back in Manhattan or wherever, so it's not for them. This is for people who want to experience, Fort Lauderdale in the off season. We have what's called Lauder Deals. And under the Lauder Deals umbrella is hotel deals, which we don't micromanage. We take whatever deals a hotel wants to give us. Other destinations really micromanage and say you have to do A, B, and C. It's the things to do, which is usually 2-for-1 for attractions. And then we have a program called Dine Out Lauderdale, but that's like your typical restaurant week, but we do it for 2 months. So that's 3-course prefix menus at the hottest restaurants that you can't even get a reservation at for like this coming Friday. But during that time period, we're promoting the heck out of it. And you can, get a 3-course meal for $35 or $45, depending on, the type of the restaurant. And then also spa deals goes through those 2 months too. So then that's when we're completely changing our trajectory of marketing. We're not going after New York, DC, Boston, Philly, the typical markets where they come in the winter. We're going after Ohio, Cincinnati. We're going after Raleigh-Durham. We're going after the different markets where they're looking for deals. And we have really the data that shows us which markets those are. And then we've been doing some crazy stuff too, where, it's crazy to me because it's scary with privacy concerns where people, they're not just following like where your phone's going. They're triangulating different apps that you're going into, taking the data, not your name, but taking the data and putting it into a little bucket and then selling it to everybody. I'm buying that data because it's so good, but it also scares me. But that's how we're figuring out like what markets are we going to hit, especially in our off season. And then we create a campaign specifically for that because that's when the hotels are hurting and the restaurants are hurting the most. They need that business.
Thank you. Okay. Pat, do you have anything else for us today?
I'm really impressed. Very, very excited that you're interviewing for the position. Done a great job of answering all these questions.
Thank you.
Scott?
But of course, you've done a fine job talking about transparency, and I'll just reflect a little bit on our meet and greet with the county commissioners yesterday, or more to the point, my curiosity is how do you convert marketing speak to normal people's language and understanding? We had a commissioner yesterday that scolded us for using KPI in our transparency page because he had to indeed go look up and see what that is. And I guess the moral of the story is how do you explain to the layman, to the county commissioner, the town council, and to that end, the rest of the stakeholders, how do you make that conversion from little numbers and percentages and that sort of thing, pardon me, into something that this general public can understand?
That's a great question. And, I think of it as, like, I'll give you an example. When I am talking about our digital advertising and I'll say, what we're doing as far as programmatic buys, people are like, what the heck is a programmatic buy? And so I break it down just like I would if I was trying to figure it out for myself. Programmatic is when you're scrolling through your, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, it doesn't have to be, it could just be your Googling stuff. And all those ads start popping up at you and you're like, wait a minute, how did they know I was just looking at Dick's Sporting Goods and wanted to buy that, new glove or those new snowshoes or whatever it is? They're following me around. That's programmatic advertising where they figure out little information about you and then it pops up in different areas. So instead of me buying a banner ad on New York Times, which I will do, I will buy through a company that specializes in programmatic ads, and they're just going to pop them up wherever you're looking at because you are on my list of target. I told them I want a certain income, I want a certain age group, and I want a certain location. And so if that's an example of how I break it down of something that always confuses people is programmatic. So I just kind of, I just speak in normal talk. I put my blonde hair back on and what do I need to understand it myself?
Awesome. Thanks, Kara.
Unmute there. If indeed we go forward with this relationship, I think figuring out how to speak to those other levels, if you will, or other audiences is going to be extremely key.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else? So what I would probably like to just wrap up with is, I know that we've asked a ton of questions between first round and today. Hopefully we've covered all of the relevant things, but is there something that we have not asked you that you would really like to share? Something that you think is relevant and important that would be helpful for this group to know before we begin any kind of deliberations? Anything that you were wanting to find a way to work into the interview, but maybe it didn't happen. So now's your chance to work that in.
Well, last time I think it was Josh that asked me what I like to do for fun. You guys didn't ask me that question. And I believe my answer was stand-up paddleboarding, if you want to know. But no, I mean, you guys asked a wide variety of questions, some that were surprising, and I hope I was able to be clear with my answers. But, it's an interview like this is so challenging because it's like I have to sit here and try to brag about myself. I want you guys to think highly of me and think that, the work that I've done is interesting and good and could help you. So it's a crazy feeling to have to then brag about yourself for how long, what are we now, an hour and 20 minutes? Now I need to go eat a piece of humble pie, I think.
Awesome. All right.
Do you have along those same lines, do you have any questions for us?
I do want to know so you're not a 501c6. And are you a government agency?
Come on. Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are an organization that is based on a relationship between Larimer County and the town of Estes Park under the rules of the local marketing district law of the state of Colorado. We were one of the first ones in. It took a number of us a number of years to convince the state that the local marketing district concept was indeed a viable circumstance. Once that was enacted, Estes Park was one of the first ones out of the blocks. The process entailed getting a significant number of commercial property owners to sign a petition, and then it went to the public ballot, if you will, for the entire marketing district area, which is out, town of Estes Park plus Larimer County, hence that curious relationship. Ultimately, the county and the town need to approve our operating plan each year. If they don't approve it, the gig's up. And we try to figure out how to give everybody their money back. But that's the nature of the creature as it stands.
Okay, so then the operating plan is something that the staff presents to the board, and then the board will give feedback and you work it into a document that you're proud of. And then you present it to the town board, and then you also present it to Larimer County.
Yeah, that process is kind of loosely construed. I'm not going to tell you that the ground up concept necessarily works that way, but the moral of the story is that operating plan needs to have a budget in it. The town nor the county need to approve the budget, but they need to approve an operating plan that includes a budget.
Got it.
And that is for the upcoming year. Hence, early September each year, somewhere in that general time frame, a presentation needs to be made to both of those bodies. And historically, that's where we've gotten our toes held to the fire, if you will, or more to the point, the guillotine gets rolled out and various and sundry threats come flying out of the woodworks that the county is really willing to let this whole thing fly. So in our discussion with the county yesterday, we're hoping for a better relationship in that regard so that every September we're not dancing around the fire and hoping for the best.
Absolutely.
If I could just add a teeny bit to that, Scott, you did a great job of describing it. There is a memo of understanding that is between Larimer County and Visit Estes Park, as well as one between the town of Estes Park and Visit Estes Park. And then there is a similar MOU between the county and the town. Those all have very specific deadlines written into them that we as an organization have to meet so that they can meet their budget requirements. That's a long-winded sort of thing, but it's...
And then do all the fiscal years line up for each?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and you may have read about this in some of your research, but you know, with the town, roughly 2/3 of the town's budget is generated by sales tax from visitors. So, with a town this size of roughly 10,000 year-round residents, we would never in a million years have the kind of facilities that we have that also are important to local residents that are retired and have nothing to do with the tourism industry. So, you know, we've got something in excess of 100 restaurants. We've got all kinds of, probably close to 200 shops. We've got rec centers. We've got a beautiful library. We've got a hospital district. So there's all kinds of things that are supported by tourism that we enjoy, that if we were sitting in the middle of the plains of eastern Colorado with 10,000 people, we would not have here.
For sure.
So I, you know, there is grudging support, even I think from some residents that maybe don't support the tourism, et cetera, but balancing those things is important. Selling what you do is important. We did with the county, we have 3 basically new county commissioners. So we've got a clean slate. We've got one that's been there, I think, for a little over a year, maybe 2. And then we've got 2 brand new commissioners as well. So we are setting up a quarterly meeting. We're just at the beginnings of that. So our new CEO will have some ability to help us form that, to where we can reach out and make sure that the commissioners are on the same page as us prior to the point where we get to the operating plan needing to be
that's
approved.
That's a great way to attack that. Yeah.
So,
well, and ultimately the county gets very little, if any, sales tax value. The county's primary income is property tax.
Yep.
Hence, their dog in the fight is significantly smaller. If they've even got a dog, it may be something more like a gerbil, but to the town, it is significantly more meaningful, and hence the need for the town itself to advocate for this organization is extremely key. And it's important to remind the county that if these businesses aren't operating up here, the odds of getting the property tax income heading their direction are perhaps slim and non-existent. But we're clearly looking to do some work in the public / government PR relationship circumstance over the next period of time.
And I would argue that a strong tourism industry supports higher property values for everybody. So,
Yeah.
So any other questions you have for us, Kara?
Yep, arguing's great. Convincing is another story altogether, though.
Absolutely. No, this has been great, you guys. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to come before you and answer these questions and get to know you guys a little bit too.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Anything else before we wrap up this portion of the meeting? I'm going to turn it back over to Deb, our chair.
Thank you, Kara. With that being said, and I've enjoyed it too. I look forward to meeting you again, and you've fulfilled that expectation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With that being said, I would like a motion to go to executive session.